If it's Wednesday with 20 days to go, we are on the ground in battleground Georgia, talking to voters, candidates, and officials in a state that could decide the balance of power in Washington and the future of both parties. Live from Atlanta, it is a special edition of Meet the Press Now. Happy, Wednesday. When you're this close to election season, you're always checking what day of the week it is. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Chuck Todd. I am live from battleground Georgia here in Atlanta. Folks, when we were here earlier this year, we predicted this would be the swingiest swing state this midterm cycle. And with just 20 days to go from Election Day, it's sure looking like Georgia could again decide which party controls the Senate. Georgia has become a ground zero for so many of the issues that are roiling our national politics. And at this moment, with less than 3 weeks to go before E-Day, and with voting already underway here, the unconventional national midterm environment we've been telling you about for the last few months has all of a sudden started to look like a more typical referendum on the party in power. Inflation and economic issues appearing to regain momentum with voters over issues like the democracy and abortion rights. President Biden spent yesterday trying to remind Democrats of the outrage they have felt this summer after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, a sign that the White House is concerned that the fire that the issue lit under many voters earlier this year may be diminishing a bit. Meanwhile, some other issues that for a time made it seem like these midterms were going to be an historical anomaly, issues like the outsized presence of former President Donald Trump after the FBI raid on his Florida property, or the revelations from the January 6th committee hearings, have both seemed to fade a bit. And it's leaving Democrats exposed with a message on the economy that, as they'll admit, needs some work. Here's what Speaker Pelosi told Punchbowl News yesterday, quote, "Inflation is there, but it's global and not as bad as it is in some countries. We'll have to message it better in the next 3 weeks ahead." That may be an understatement. The message from the White House today was notably all about the issue of inflation, as President Biden announced he would once again tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, hoping to reverse what has been a recent small uptick in prices at the pump, as the cost of everything from food to rent remains stubbornly high for millions of workers and voters. This afternoon, I spoke to a group of undecided voters here in Atlanta about what specifically is going to deliver their crucial vote in this final stretch. Why are you undecided?
None of the candidates have asked me for my vote. They're all telling me why I shouldn't vote for the other person, but none of them are giving me propositions of what they'll actually do.
Is there something you're looking for from them? Not just the, hey, will you vote for me, but is there a specific policy proposal or character test you're looking for?
I'm really looking for a reduction in the partisanship, a reduction in the noise. I would take any legislation at this point over the grandstanding.
The business environment is killing, and also I'm pro law enforcement.
Yeah.
And
so Governor Kemp's campaign's been speaking to you?
Yeah, a little bit, yes. More so than Secy's is, because we can't afford to have law enforcement not support it. You have to have a relationship whether you like it or not.
I don't think that I could vote Herschel just yet. I think that he has become too much of what I don't want. I mean, to be frank.
I would love to just vote the issues.
Right.
But there's this downstream issue that this extremism on the Republican side is kind of scary. It really, and you can hear other Republicans starting to say, hey, we've lost control. They've actually lost control.
How important is it to you that Kemp push back against Trump, and that makes you more open to Kemp?
Yeah. That was important.
If he hadn't pushed back against Trump, would that have been a disqualifier?
It wouldn't have been a disqualifier, but it also wouldn't have. It's not a disqualifier, but the fact that he pushed back is one of the plus. One of the plus items in the column. It makes him seem independent, really not just seem. He is more independent.
None of you have brought up abortion. Is that on front of mind on anybody?
It is. Mm-hmm. I think that when women literally don't have a voice, 20
Is it so important of an issue, though, that you would ignore other issues and only vote on that?
Man, I sure don't like a national ban on abortion would be tragic.
Would you vote on that issue over and above any others? You sure?
No.
Okay.
There are other issues that are much more important than that.
If either party goes national on this, if it were a national ban, it would make me a single item voter. If there were a national codification of Roe versus Wade, I wouldn't mind.
I'm joined now by two of my colleagues who have been covering Georgia's midterm races from the ground this entire campaign season, Blaine Alexander and Ellison Barber. I'll tell you, there's so much more to that panel. They were fascinating, and they really were truly caught in the middle. Blaine, I'm curious, when you hear the voters talking about that governor's race the way they're talking about it, and Trump, it is really hard not to look at this governor's race and say, boy, the Trump Teflon that Kemp sort of got, or the anti-Trump Teflon, seems to be paying huge dividends.
You know what? I think that really is one of the biggest differences in the race this time around than what we saw in 2018. Because back then, he was running as a Trump-aligned candidate. Remember, this is a rematch. So before he was running as a very closely Trump-aligned candidate, that very public split that they had over the 2020 election results, in many ways, and when I talk to Republican sources of mine, they say that in many ways they believe that's going to help him, that he can pick up some votes from people who maybe were in the suburbs and maybe didn't vote for him last time because they felt he was too extreme. They're looking for those votes this time around.
Ellison, the other thing I took away from here is, boy, if there were a different Republican running against Warnock, Warnock might be behind.
Yeah, it is fascinating to talk to voters about this race. We have talked about, you and I have had discussions about this, I feel like for months, of this idea of the elusive voter who is planning to vote for Governor Kemp, identifies as a Republican, but says, hey, Herschel Walker has some controversies in his personal life and might be a bridge too far, so I'm going to split and I'm going to vote for Warnock. I have met two people in real life who identify as those voters. Neither of them would publicly talk about it. I think we're at this...
I think I found two that are going to be, I think two of those three are going to be split.
I have a very hard time getting people to say that to me on camera, and I think it reflects how divided, how tense things are here. But there is this group of people, the question when I've spoken to sources even close to Warnock's campaign on like their internal polling, on whether or not they're seeing this reflected at all in internal polling, they say they have such a hard time quantifying that, but that's out there.
Well, I want to get at something that they all seem to talk about, some form of the drama. Right, with Walker, Blaine, and I'm curious, you know, Joe Biden, I think for some voters was seen as the no-drama candidate compared to Trump. Who are the no-drama candidates in this race?
You know what's interesting is that there's a big contrast between the two races, senator and governor's race. In the governor's race, there really isn't any drama, no personal drama, and some of the national things that have come really haven't penetrated this race. If you watched the debate on Monday, it really was focused on policy.
Very generic.
It was a very substantive debate.
In a positive way. It doesn't feel like everything else we're seeing around the country.
What I've heard when I've talked to voters, both people who are going to the polls this week, people in rural parts and urban parts of the state, they're focused on the same issues, but they just think that different candidates are going to deliver. Economy is one, inflation is one, but abortion is something that people are certainly interested in. We talked with an early voter earlier this week, and I asked her, you know, what is driving you? She said, I want somebody who understands how much I'm paying, you know, things. And I said, inflation is a top issue. She said, yes. She left. She came back, and she told our team, actually, I thought about it, women's rights. That's really what I wanted to say. Abortion. That is a big driver for me, and that's something that really drives her to the polls.
Ellison, the tone of the governor's race and the tone of the Senate races couldn't be different. The tone of the ads, and I had conversations with these voters. In fact, one of them was thinking about skipping the race, and I said, oh, so you're voting for the runoff? And he goes, no! Oh, my God, I don't want 4 more weeks of this.
Yeah. I mean, both campaigns, when you speak to sources close to the campaigns, they refuse to even use that word. They call it the R word. And I've had someone look at me and say, don't even say it. We will not talk about it, right? No one wants to see this go beyond Election Day. I think Georgia voters especially, they have been bombarded by ads. I grew up here. This is also not something that I feel like Georgia voters are entirely used to. It's not like a place like Ohio. So I think in some ways people are getting used to this bombardment, just this constant flood of ads. But on the Senate side, they have been pretty personal for both sides. And I think one thing that has been interesting is that Senator Warnock hasn't necessarily gone there on his own. The ads we've seen from the left attacking Walker on personal issues, those tend to come from outside groups.
Right.
Warnock has really tried to drive home this narrative of, I want to talk about what I've done in Washington and what
I've noticed his attack ad on Walker is the one that says, oh, I like Herschel Walker's jersey on my wall. I don't want him in the Senate. They seem to be much softer attacks.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one thing when you talk about that and just different attack guys, when you really look at this whole race, though, I think one thing we have to bring in, though, is the fact that the environment is different. When you talk about Georgia elections, the last time that Georgians went to the polls, it was a 2020 election and received attacks on the validity of the election itself from the then president and his allies. And I think when I've spoken with sources who actually run elections and officials, they say it's absolutely true that this is a different type of environment. We've seen poll workers getting threatened. In fact, it led the Secretary of State to take different actions this year to
we talked about that earlier.
Absolutely.
We talked about they have a little text messaging
and that's
program.
something that we reported this week, that they're doing that to really make the poll workers feel safe, and it's something they didn't have to do last time around.
I don't want to put you guys in a prediction business, but Allison, do you feel like you could explain any result? Meaning, if Warnock gets to 50, you can, I think everybody's going to jump on, well, character mattered. And if it's a runoff, then environment mattered.
I refuse to do any sort of prediction.
No, I understand.
But I will say, one of the things that has been interesting to me, listening to a lot of what Herschel Walker has said about some of the personal issues, right? We talk about that abortion allegation, his past history of domestic abuse, things that he has in some instances acknowledged to, obviously adamantly denying that abortion allegation. And I was trying to wrap my head around why, with the Republican core, particularly evangelical voters, who we spent a lot of time talking with in our County to County series in Chattooga County, why they would say, okay, we're okay with this. And I was listening to one of the answers that he gave Kristen Welker when he sat down with her a few days ago, and he talked about, I no longer live in that house as it relates to his past history of violence tendencies. He said, I have been saved, and talked about religion. That right there, saying I've been redeemed, I've been saved, holds immense weight in the evangelical community amongst his core base. And the fact that he explains it with that point, even if the national media is saying you haven't addressed all this, that answer, I think, for people in Chattooga County is more than enough.
Blaine, a year ago, when people talked about the Georgia governor's race producing a future presidential candidate, most people thought they were talking about Stacey Abrams. Yeah. Now the conversation, I hear a little bit of talk about Brian Kemp.
You know what's interesting is that when I go to different Kemp events on the campaign trail, he stays laser focused on Georgia. He doesn't talk about the national issues, the national Republican issues. He stays focused on Georgia, and that's because he has a record to run on. And so he really stays on that. He talks about the economy. Even his messaging is different than national Republicans. He's basically making the case that things are good in Georgia. The economy's good.
He's not trying to say it's bad. It's an interesting counter influence.
He talks about inflation. He says that. He ties Joe Biden to Stacey Abrams, but he says, hey, things are good in Georgia. He goes back to the fact that he reopened the state first when it came to COVID. He's hoping that that's going to carry him across the finish line. Stacey Abrams is making the case that, listen, it's good for some people, not everybody.
All right, Blaine Alexander, Ellison Barber. This is a great beat to be on. I think the Georgia beat will keep on delivering. Thank you both. We're going to be talking to a lot of them, and you're going to see a lot of both of them between now and Election Day, as I promised. And as we mentioned, early voting is underway here in Georgia. Turnout is at record highs so far. The issues of ballot access and election integrity have been front and center in Georgia this year and last. After 2020, when Republican election officials resisted pressure from former President Trump and his allies to overturn the election results here, and after the governor signed a new, more restrictive election law, which critics say makes voting more difficult. That said, so far, early voting is hitting record numbers. Earlier today, I talked to the state Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who is running for re-election, and I started our conversation by asking him about the record early vote turnout Georgia has so far seen this week.
Well, I've said this is a turnout race. We knew that in 2018 we had 4 million people show up to vote. 2020 we had 5 million. I said, the number will be somewhere in between, but obviously it looks to me like it's going to be closer to that 5 million than the 4 million. And so we've been preparing the counties since day one. Expect a large turnout, and the voters are responding. They're very excited.
Let's talk about the safety of election workers. You have developed an app explain the app and what it's for.
It's a poll worker protection app. It's text-based, but every poll worker manager will have that. But it's really, if you see any situation, you type in what that situation is, you press the send button, then our election director and Jesse, his assistant, get that information along with the county election director. And if you want, you can also send that to local law enforcement. But it's really to give people information. Is it just an unruly person, or is it actually a significantly very dangerous threat level? So if law enforcement is, coming to a poll working location, right, they know what they could be facing.
We know that many losing candidates now look at election denial as an excuse for their own loss, and it's a contagious. Maybe this seems to be contagious. We've seen already in primary seasons people not accepting. We have some general election candidates that are already skeptical of the results, and they haven't been counted yet. Do you have a plan to combat this election denialism that may take place on your side of the aisle?
Well, my very personal plan is I will not be disputing the results for my race. I know that we have honest and fair elections for everyone. In fact, we've been recognized by both the Heritage Foundation, which is on the right side of the aisle, and also the Center for Election Innovation Research, which is on the other side of the aisle. We've been recognized for both of them being tops for election accessibility and security. We have honest and fair elections in Georgia, and I trust the results. And I'll trust the results for my race, and I would encourage everyone, when they run, you can accept the results. Yes, if it's so close, within 5-vote difference, something like that, you're allowed your recounts, you're allowed your challenges, thing like that. But at the end of the day, when you've gone through that lawful process, accept the results and realize that you just came up a field goal short.
You know, it's interesting, in your own debate, you experienced, I guess it's the Libertarian candidate that's trying to appeal to election deniers. You're having to deal with this in your own race. How are you handling it?
Well, I've been pushing back about election denialism back after 2018 and 2020. Now, one side wants to only talk about the 2020, one side only wants to talk about the 2018. We've been pushing back from both sides.
Stacey Abrams still believes these rules, these voting rules, are suppressing the vote. Now, there's different ways. You hear that expression and people hear and they automatically, but her argument is you're just limiting options for people to vote, and it seems that the limitations are always designed for the left side of the aisle. What do you say to that?
Absolutely not true. We have now photo ID for absentee voting, and the first state to implement that was Minnesota. We modeled that law after Minnesota, who's been doing it for 10 years. By having photo ID for absentee voting, you eliminate those questions about signature match when be sued by both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party saying it's subjective. We have an objective criteria. We have photo ID for absentee voting, just like Minnesota. We then now have 17 days of early voting. President Biden's home state of Delaware only has 10 days early voting. And we have record turnout. We have record registrations. It's never been easier to vote in Georgia. And we have the money. We have the turnout. Yeah. We're seeing people show up to vote. So the facts are in the numbers.
Do you think the Republican Party has lost its moral compass when it comes to accepting so many character flaws in so many of their candidates? And I specifically talk about Herschel Walker.
Well, I'm really running my own race, and I won't really get into personalities, but what I will say is when the Republican Party really represents the best, highest ideals of our founder of our party, which was Abraham Lincoln, and then you go back to Jefferson and Washington, but those values, those are timeless values, and when we get back to that, we'll do just fine. But it gets down to integrity, it gets down to character, it gets back to just basic honesty and civil discourse. We have conversations with people, and a touch of kindness. Kindness, you can be a principled conservative like myself and still be kind and have conversations with people. And I think we get back to those values, our party will do just fine.
Let me ask you this, just in the way you vote, how much does character count for you when you decide on somebody's vote? Are you willing to vote against somebody that may share your policy goals, but their character is so flawed that it actually you're concerned that it might hurt your long-term pursuit of those policy goals with the party? How much does that enter in your decision to vote for somebody?
My decision really centers on integrity, character, and honesty. I think what I've shown is I'm going to stand for the rule of law, and I'm going to buck my own party if I have to, because what I do here, this should not be a partisan job. This is an impartial job. I am making sure that we have honest and fair elections for everyone. And that's so important to me, and it should be so important to every American.
Your experience with the January 6th committee, do you find everything they've been doing is credible?
Well, I haven't watched every single thing, but I think that...
But you've testified, and you've dealt with them. Are they professional?
They dealt with me professionally, and they asked good questions. And I wanted to share what happened in Georgia, because there's so much misinformation, disinformation, going back to the election denialism from 2018, 2020. Here are the facts. This is what we have in Georgia. We have photo ID for all forms of voting now. We have record registrations, record turnout, and the results are accurate. We do 100% hand recount, and we get the same answer as the machines. What does that tell you?
What message should other Republicans take away from your primary victory and Governor Kemp's primary victory over election denialism?
I think integrity matters. You do the right thing, not worried about what the cost is, but at the end of the day, let the chips fall where they may. But when you do the right thing, you can always look at yourself in the mirror. You look at what your wife, your kids, your grandkids, and you know that you've done the right thing. But also, the most important thing is you lived up and you really, supported the model that we have of free and fair elections for everyone. We have a constitution, we have the rule of law, and that's what I lean into. I wish that everyone would do that because it's so important.
Mr. Secretary, good to see you.
Good to see you, John.
Stay safe on the trail.
Thanks.
Folks, we've got some developments in several other key Senate races today. That is coming up. Plus, I'm going to speak with Georgia Republican and the Lieutenant Governor, Geoff Duncan, who has emerged as a key critic of the party and his Senate candidate, Herschel Walker. He'll be here next. You're watching a special edition of Meet the Press Now, live from Battleground, Georgia. We are back, and as we said, split-ticket voters. People who vote for candidates in both parties. They may be increasingly rare, but there could be quite a few of them here in the state of Georgia this year. I think it's possible 2 of my 3 independents I spoke to will end up being split-ticket voters. They certainly hinted at it in our conversation. Republican Governor Brian Kemp is polling ahead of Stacey Abrams in his re-election race. But some of those Kemp voters may not vote for the embattled Republican Senate nominee, Herschel Walker. The chunk of voters across party lines in these races could end up deciding control of the Senate. I got that up-close view of this split-ticket phenomenon with those undecided voters in Georgia today. Take a listen.
I'm likely to vote split ticket. If I had to vote right now, I would probably, for what you said, the reduction of drama, I would probably vote Warnock because he is not bringing the drama. I would probably vote Kemp because he's the reduction in drama as well.
Are you voting for Warnock or against Walker?
I'm Warnock. I'm voting for Warnock.
No, but you see why I asked that question.
Yes.
Yeah, meaning you're for him. It's not necessarily a vote against Walker.
No. For one, I think the other candidate is anti-intellectual. I think that politics, you have to have some degree of intellect to get it going. I think that his character is in question. When I watched the debate, he just seemed like had these talking points. Well, you voted for Biden. Well, you voted for Biden. Well, what are you going to do? Yeah. I need to hear what you're going to do. What are you going, just like I haven't heard from Secy. I'm okay, what are you going to do about the business environment? Right. What are you going to do about the infrastructure? What are you going to do about crime?
With me now is Georgia Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan. He's been highly critical of Herschel Walker as the Republicans' chosen Senate nominee, and Mr. Duncan is not seeking re-election. It's good to see you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Good to be here.
First, I got to ask, after speaking with Brad Raffensperger, been talking about Governor Kemp, you could have probably won your primary. Have you had any second thoughts about not seeking re-election?
Yeah, none. When Brooke and I sat down and tried to figure out what we were going to do next, it never came into our mind that we couldn't win again. Is that we just felt like the problem was so big with the Republican Party, both in our state and in our country, that we wanted to dive headfirst into the deep end of that pool and try to help and rebuild the party. And that's a long-term game. And as Lieutenant Governor, it kind of hamstrings you as to having that conversation with America.
You have an interesting critique of the entire Walker candidacy, that you don't understand how Walker became the nominee. Forget the character and integrity questions, but the process itself.
Well, unfortunately, I do understand it. He was a national celebrity, scored a bunch of touchdowns, and was a sports icon in Georgia. Rightfully so. He earned that right. He was a handpick of Donald Trump and certainly endorsed by him, and that's how he won the nomination. But I don't think the founding fathers expected us to use those 2 criteria to pick a ever important U.S. senator.
You are trying to, you wrote a book, you're trying to reposition the Republican Party. Kemp, Warnock victories. What lessons should the Republican Party take away from a Kemp victory and a Warnock victory?
So Brian Kemp has probably run the best campaign I've ever seen. He has absolutely been able to point back to a successful record during COVID, economic development, civil unrest. I mean, every minute of every day he's pointing back to his record and doing a great job at it. And I think he's going to be rewarded handsomely for it. There's no doubt why he's got a 13-point delta between his lead over Abrams and Warnock's lead over Walker. because Herschel Walker doesn't have the policies to point to. Now, look, he's still got 2 weeks, and maybe there's something else in the tank. He certainly took a step forward in the debate. He did better than expectations. Warnock probably did less than expectations. The biggest thing Herschel Walker did during that debate was denounce the fact that Donald Trump won the election and it was rigged. And that opened him up to a new trove of voters, potential voters, that are now going to take the next 2 weeks to genuinely validate whether or not they're going to vote for him.
All right, but do you think it's healthy for the party if Walker wins despite all this?
I think it brings a lot of pause, right, as to how we got here again, right? Because I think at the end of the day, I want a U.S. senator that represents what a Johnny Isakson did and what David Perdue did before he, got beat and then decided to come run some crazy campaign against Brian Kemp. But I want a senator who's able to articulate not just a vote, not just a cheat sheet as to what to vote for, right, but the ability to walk into a committee hearing and hold somebody accountable that hasn't done it right or is trying to get a piece of legislation passed. Look, Herschel Walker, if he wins the race, has the ability to do that. My hope is that he dives into that part of the job description and becomes an expert at it.
We had this issue of character and integrity. Look, I think how somebody decides to vote is subjective. Let me just ask you, how important do you think character and integrity should be in deciding who a senator is?
Well, it's huge. I'm raising 3 boys right now, 3 teenage kids, and I'm trying to teach them the importance of their character and integrity. And, certainly that's important in my house. But I think as, you look at these businesses represented here, they're not electing or hiring CEOs that are falling off the rails and have scandals written all around them. And certainly in America, right, I look back to the last 2 elections. We've elected Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and none of these companies here would pick either one of them to run these businesses. I mean, that lemonade stand down there wouldn't pick either one of these folks to run their company. But yet we keep watering ourselves down and our expectations down, and that's what GOP 2.0 is about. Increase the bar, raise the bar to put our policies on display, because I think they're winning strategies.
And I asked you this before, so on one hand, you're writing about what the party should be, but you walked away. In order to fix the party, more people like you have to stay in the party and run, don't you?
Well, I'm not leaving the Republican Party. I'm just not running for re-election as lieutenant governor, which has been a great honor for me and my family. And as we've talked about before, it's a great intersection for my policy over politics platform.
You're going to miss it?
No, I'm going to stay involved. I'm going to continue to do stuff like this. I'm going to continue to speak to folks around the country about the right step forward for the Republican parties to embrace the policies that we know work, the empathy to understand the other side, and a tone that's encouraging instead of dismissive.
I just was recently in Wisconsin, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and of all the other battlegrounds, Georgia's sort of new to this battleground, and of all the battleground states, it looks to me more like Wisconsin than some of the other ones for this respect. There's no swing county in Georgia. Right, there's not anymore. Back in the days you could have pointed to Cobb, but there's, it really is margins, and it's very possible that Kemp and Walker could win the same number of counties, but one wins an election and one loses the election. In an environment like that, how do you fight polarization? Wisconsin is more polarized today than it ever has been, and without a swing county, without this idea that it's just who gets the most jersey numbers out. How do you avoid this in governing?
Well, most folks don't know this, but we have 159 counties in Georgia, so that's a difficult situation. And you're right, it does split the vote up into 159 categories. Some are very rural and some are very urban, like we're seeing in the backdrop here. The worst thing for Georgia is that we're on the national scene. Right? We have to play national politics in local races.
I had a governor who will remain nameless who said to me, get these Senate races out of my state.
Yeah.
I want to run on my issues of the state, the Senate races, then the national environment comes in and wrecks it.
We know how to do conservatism here, and the voters are going to continue to reward statewide officials like Brian Kemp because they've done what they've said they're going to do. They're going to run the state with a conservative strategy, and I think a majority of folks in the middle, and even some, maybe slightly left of center, are going to vote for Brian Kemp because they appreciate that they opened up their businesses quicker than everybody else, because they got their schools back in order post-COVID. They're going to reward him for that.
But it's interesting you said Georgia knows how to do conservatism here, but when the national environment comes in, what does it do to conservatism?
It short circuits the system, right? If this Senate race ends up in a runoff, I can't imagine what's going to happen, right? The whole balance of the U.S. Senate might once again balance on Georgia. The hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars pouring into TVs and ads and mailboxes. It just short circuits what the authentic ability to elect our senators.
You think it makes governing harder?
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's no recovery, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. If I think back a few short years ago, I would never have imagined having 2 Democratic U.S. senators. Johnny Isakson and David Perdue are doing a perfectly good job. But then Donald Trump came in and train wrecked that situation, and now we have 2 Democratic senators.
Geoff Duncan, the retiring lieutenant governor, but not retiring from politics? I think we'll see you down the road. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
You got it. Up next, Pennsylvania Democratic Senate hopeful John Fetterman just released some new details on his health from his doctor 6 months after a stroke that he says nearly killed him. We'll have details on that next. You're watching a special edition of Meet the Press Now, live from Georgia. Welcome back to our special Meet the Midterms edition of Meet the Press Now. Today we are live from Atlanta. And while we're here in Georgia, there's certainly plenty of developments in several of the other key Senate races we're watching, including one of our core 3 races, Pennsylvania. With less than a week until his debate with Republican Mehmet Oz, Democratic Pennsylvania Senate nominee John Fetterman's campaign released a letter today from his doctor that says, quote, overall, the lieutenant governor is recovering well from his stroke and his health has continued to improve. Goes on to note that Fetterman spoke intelligently without cognitive deficits and that his speech was normal. This was the first time we've heard from Fetterman's doctors in months, and it comes after, just last week, our own Dasha Burns pressed the Senate candidate on the issue of transparency around his recovery as he faces auditory processing issues as a result of the incident. All of this comes at a pivotal time with a new AARP Pennsylvania poll showing Fetterman and Oz polling within the margin of error among likely voters. Basically what you saw there, Fetterman's number hasn't changed. Looks like some Republicans, quote unquote, came home to Oz and Oz's number caught up. I'm joined now by Dasha Burns, who's been covering the Pennsylvania race and of course who sat down with both Fetterman and Oz last week. So let's start with the new letter from the doctor. Dasha, how much detail does it get into, and what remaining questions do you have and will more folks have once they read this letter?
Well, look, as you mentioned, this letter came after our interview with Fetterman we aired last week where we pressed him for his medical records, and after editorials from the likes of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that also pressed for his medical records. And look, this is a step toward transparency. This is a letter from his primary care provider. It talks about his blood pressure, his cholesterol levels, all saying that he has normal vitals, essentially, and talked about, as you mentioned, that he spoke intelligently without cognitive deficits, but said that he continues to exhibit symptoms of an auditory processing disorder. Now, he's also seeing other specialists like a neurologist, a cardiologist, a speech therapist who could get much more specific on his current condition. And just yesterday, the Oz campaign also pressed again, as he's been doing, for Fetterman's medical records. The Oz campaign releasing a statement from 15 doctors, all Pennsylvania doctors, that called on his medical records to be released and saying that anything less is nothing short of deception. Now, look, I think voters can have the debate over whether or not this is enough transparency, how much more transparency there should be, but this is a step, certainly doesn't answer all of those questions, though, Chuck.
At the end of the day, Dasha, I think just him being on the campaign trail, the more events he does, the debate, it sounds like, you know, what he does on the trail will be the ultimate answer to the question, will it not?
Yeah, Chuck, I mean, that debate, let me tell you, voters are hungry for it. They are eager for it. There's been so much sparring on the airwaves, on social media. All the voters I talked to are eager to just see those two candidates face to face on a debate stage, Chuck.
Dasha, are you seeing any evidence? Is Fetterman doing more events now?
He's had a pretty steady cadence of events. He's been rallying across counties. He's been spending a little bit more time in the eastern part of the state where people aren't as familiar with him as they are in Pittsburgh, where he has his hometown of Braddock. So he's certainly been out there, and that's the case he's making. He's made it to us in the interview last week. Look, I'm out there. Voters can see for themselves, and they can judge for themselves on how I'm doing. Chuck?
All right. Dasha Burns, who is our correspondent on all things Pennsylvania these days. Dasha, thank you. And speaking of Pennsylvania, that's our next stop. We're going to be live in Pennsylvania for Meet the Press Now, the day after that key debate between Oz and Fetterman. So we'll be speaking to you then for sure. Dasha, that's for sure. Now let's turn to Arizona, where Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin is on the trail today with gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake, sticking to Republican messaging and hitting Democratic candidate Katie Hobbs on crime, immigration, and inflation. Vaughn Hilliard is on the ground force in Tucson. He's been covering the Lake campaign, and he was there for this event.
Chuck, a lot about today is not only about 2022, but it could also say a lot about 2024. Kari Lake's decision to campaign alongside Glenn Youngkin, who just 1 year ago, the Virginia governor, was largely kept Donald Trump at an arm's distance, not ever campaigning alongside of him and never bear-hugging the former president as part of his bid. Ultimately, he upset in the blue state of Virginia against the Democrat to become governor. And that is why you see Kari Lake trying to broaden her own appeal to the Arizona electorate that has shown a willingness over the last 3 years to vote for Democrats, not only for the U.S. Senate, but also Joe Biden by a narrow margin in the 2020 election. It's also interesting to know there was a woman here as Youngkin and Lake were on stage at the same time who shouted Youngkin Lake in 24, which Youngkin paused at that suggestion, grinned, turned to Lake, pointed at her and said, "That's your call." Of course, Glenn Youngkin has not announced a run for president in 2024, but he could be a contender against the likes of Donald Trump. And that is where you see Kari Lake really being embraced by most ends of this Republican Party. Of course, not all parts of it. Liz Cheney criticized Glenn Youngkin for choosing to come and campaign here in Arizona alongside Kari Lake, who has denied that Joe Biden actually won the 2020 election, including here in Arizona. Youngkin has tried to separate himself from some of that election denialism, but by choosing to campaign alongside Kari Lake today and boost her candidacy, he is implicitly backing her and explicitly endorsing her candidacy for your Arizona governor. Chuck?
Vaughn Hilliard on the ground there in Arizona, covering that key battleground state for us. Thank you for that reporting. And finally, let's turn to Florida, where Senator Marco Rubio and Congresswoman Val Demings faced off in their first and only debate last night. And woo, did it get sticky. It got back and forth. The two Senate candidates clashed over everything, a number of issues from inflation, abortion, guns, immigration, including this fiery exchange on Congresswoman Demings' legislative record.
She's never passed a single bill. She's been in Congress for over half a decade. She's never passed a bill, not PPP, not anything. Not a single bill she's passed has ever become law.
That's not true. I know the senator, look, and I'm really disappointed in you, Marco Rubio, because I think there was a time when you did not lie in order to win.
Yesterday's debate comes after our friends at the Cook Political Report shifted their rating of the Florida Senate race from lean Republican to likely Republican. Quite aggressive there. And for even more coverage from the campaign trail, I spoke to reporters covering the key races in the three states that I think will end up deciding who controls the Senate: Georgia, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. All of that is on today's episode of the Chuck Toddcast. It is available wherever you get your podcasts, so go take a listen. Up next, the mayor of Atlanta will be here. We'll talk crime. We'll talk Georgia's political future, and whether we're all going to be back here in the summer of 2024 for the Democratic National Convention. All of that is next. You're watching a special edition of Meet the Press Now. We're live from Georgia.
I'm in the heart of downtown Atlanta. I need the police. I do.
Do you feel that crime is up?
Yes.
You feel it at
Yes.
your business?
Yes, by the grace of God, we're okay. But it is important to me.
You ever met her? Welcome back. That was just a little bit more from our panel of undecided voters that we spoke to earlier today. The rise in crime remains a major issue for voters all across the country this year, including here in the state of Georgia. 10% of voters here say that gun violence specifically is the most important issue heading into the midterms. That was according to a recent Quinnipiac University poll. Here in Atlanta, Mayor Andre Dickens has designated October as Just Peace Month to highlight initiatives to reduce violence. And Mayor Dickens joins me now. Peace Month. Walk me through it.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we express the need for peace across our community. The city of Atlanta is a thriving city. We have a lot of great things going on, but we wanted to make sure that we brought down the gun violence. And so we're doing things like healing circles and anti-violence rallies and interfaith sessions, but also making sure that our police are out in the community walking and talking with folks and going to the schools, making sure we bring crime down. Nightlife, we're talking to nightlife operators and just showing them how to operate their business safely and to make sure they think about their patrons and their staff. And so we're bringing crime down through environmental things, but also good policing. So it's a balanced approach, and so we are advocating for peace throughout this month.
You know, in hearing that small business owner, she owns a cigar shop, and hearing from them, I'm just curious, when you hear the phrase defund the police, that's clearly, I think that bothers some voters. What do you hear when you hear it, and what do you wish voters heard when they heard that phrase?
Yeah, I haven't heard people talk about the defund the police movement for quite a while, at least over a year or so. During my campaign a year ago, people talked about it. And so for me, I think what most people want is that they want sensible policing. They want to make sure that they pick up the phone and call 911 in an emergency, and a police officer shows up, that there's blue lights around, that they feel like the police know the community, but also they want to make sure that they don't have excessive use of force. So for us, the city of Atlanta, we train our police on de-escalation tactics, the biases that people may have, the implicit biases, and we make sure that they're culturally sensitive so that we don't have a lot of the issues that you may see where, excessive use of force is out there.
All right, I'm not going to ask you about the races as far as the individuals. I want to ask you about the two entities. What do you need from the United States Senate and Washington for the city of Atlanta next year?
Yeah, the great thing about the city of Atlanta right now is we are properly aligned with our federal partners to be able to support us. The Biden administration was put in office mainly because of what happened in 2020.
A former mayor of Atlanta is in that West Wing. Is that helpful?
That's right. My friend and former mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is in the West Wing working directly with President Biden. Her advocacy and her hard work as mayor is now paying off in Atlanta, especially when we have two Democratic senators that made this state go blue when we elected the first black senator and the first Jewish senator from the state of Georgia, Warnock and Ossoff. So when we think about the American Rescue Plan dollars that are coming here, helping us fight crime, helping us deal with hospital closures, helping us with the number of things we're dealing with homelessness, that came as a result of that vote from those individuals.
In fact, you've got a lot of money, but some of that money is going to go away. What's the biggest new initiative that you were able to use with this money, but that could go away, that maybe you need the state to pick up the tab? Is there something you're concerned about? Hey, I use these American Rescue dollars, like in Phoenix, they have a heat officer. Yeah. They've never been able, and they used American Rescue Plan dollars. Is there something you've started that you're like, I hope I can get the state now to pick up the tab?
Yeah, there's a number of things. So something in particular is our efforts around homelessness and housing. So a lot of the work that we did in affordable housing, overcoming some communities that were dilapidated, just poor housing standards, we were able to use American Rescue Plan money to help those people move into stable, safe housing, and also for our homeless, to be able to get them into a place where they can get the help that they need. And so if the American Rescue Plan money, if these dollars go away, then we're going to be using general fund money and other sources to try to fill this gap, as well as the things we're doing with the youth. So we used American Rescue Plan money that came from the Biden administration and those proper votes that was taken by these senators to really help us do a lot in our community. And so we need the money.
All right. Speaking of, let me ask you this. Do you think if it's Governor Abrams, you think you can get her to pick up that tab? And if it's Governor Kemp, can you talk him into it?
Yeah, the good news is, as a mayor, you just advocate for your people. So whether it's Abrams or whether it's Kemp, I'm pushing for the people of Atlanta, and they both are responding to me. So right now, if I picked up the phone and texted either one of them, they're calling me right back, because the center of this state is the city of Atlanta. So both of them are friends of mine, and making sure that the phone calls are staying open and fluid. So, of course, Stacey Abrams and I are friends, and I'm a Democrat, so I'm supporting her. But at the same time, I've been working in this state for quite a while, and I make sure that Kemp and I have a great relationship to get the job done.
So you want the Democratic National Convention?
Yes.
Why? You've had, like, 1988,
yeah.
So a long time ago.
Yeah.
Probably you were a kid.
I was a kid at that time.
Why do you want Atlanta to have this?
Well, first of all, when Democrats make investments in Georgia, good things happen. So 2020, 2021, we saw that. So we want to be on the world stage to be able to highlight what's good about Atlanta, what's going on, and then to be able to, give this city some highlights where people come here and they enjoy our restaurants, enjoy our nightlife, enjoy our hotels. I mean, there's no secret that we just got FIFA World Cup. We have the National Football Championship coming back. We were the home of the Olympics in '96. So we do big well. We continue to host folks. And so when the party came here and did their tour, they were like, hey, Atlanta's pretty cool. So
well, I was just going to say, no offense to any other cities, but given the combination of size of city and importance in the presidential battleground, how are you not the front runner?
I feel like we're the front runner. Just last week, Money Magazine said that Atlanta is the best city in the United States to live. So where you're sitting right now is the best place in the whole galaxy to live. So why wouldn't you want to have a Democratic National Convention here?
Again, I don't know politically in so many ways. If Atlanta wants it, I don't know how the Democratic Party says no.
Your list of guys here.
What happened on January 5th, 2021? They delivered the United States, the Senate majority to the Democratic Party.
Right.
I think they owe Atlanta something.
Me too. I'm with you.
I'm just saying, if you're asking, I don't know how they say no, Mr.
I don't know
Mayor.
how they say no.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Take care.
Up next, I'm joined by someone who has seen the way this state and city has changed and been watching elections here for a long time. You're watching a special edition of Meet the Press Now, live from Battleground, Georgia. We are back with our special Meet the Midterms edition of Meet the Press Now, live from Atlanta. For more on what to expect in these final 20 days, I'm joined by longtime friend of mine, colleague of mine, NBC affiliate WXIA anchor Jeff Hollinger, who has done every job I wish, including play-by-play guy for the Falcons.
I was the voice of the Atlanta Falcons for about 7 or 8 years. I've done preseason games for decades.
You have the portfolio of sports and politics, which many
I'm a man who's touched many bases. Not a power hitter, though. Simply a guy who gets on base.
Fair enough. First of all, here we were here 9 months ago before the primaries, but the writing was looking. It looked like Trump's juice was problematic here inside the primary, but nobody was for certain. Here we are 10 months later, and it feels like we're in a situation where Georgia certainly still looks like a battleground state, but it feels like the one place where Trump has influence is the one place where Republicans are struggling.
It has been curious to see how it has evolved over the last 9 months. When you and I were sitting here in January, the expectation was perhaps more Trump influence than we currently see here in late October. It's a very different looking set of races, talking specifically about the gubernatorial race and the U.S. Senate race. And these are very, very different races in terms of how we may have projected them earlier in the year.
I want to do a little history with you. Governors, it is really hard to knock off an incumbent governor. And the last one in Georgia was Roy Barnes.
Right.
What did Sonny Perdue figure out that right now it appears? Then again, Sonny Perdue was 6 or 7 points behind right about now and pulled off the upset and won. Is that still possible with Stacey Abrams? And if not, what's the missing ingredient?
I think with Sonny Perdue, what happened was the beginning of the red wave here in the South. Look, he was the first Republican gubernatorial success story since Reconstruction. And do you attribute that to Sonny Perdue? Yes, in part, certainly the way they had marketed him, the way that they had run him against Roy Barnes. But truth be told, the Republicans were beginning to make a huge mark on the South, specifically Georgia. I think Sonny Perdue, in large part, rode that wave, but he, of course, contributed to it mightily.
All right, so you see there's really not a parallel here. In this case, is this Abrams? Why does she look like she's a little bit farther behind now than she was 4 years ago?
Because I think Brian Kemp is a different kind of candidate. He certainly looks steadier on his feet. He has a record to run on. He successfully played chicken with Donald Trump, and he won.
Well, he was the Trump-loving pickup truck guy 4 years ago. And I'm being stereotypical.
That's right.
But it was that's what he was seen as, right?
Well, it was a surprise because Casey Cagle, who had been the longtime lieutenant governor, looked like he was a lock to win. And all of a sudden, the endorsement from Donald Trump came for Brian Kemp, and it changed everything. The expectation was that he would be certainly an apostle of Donald Trump. It didn't play out that way, and I think a lot of people, certainly Republicans and Democrats, are surprised by that.
So let me ask you this. Is Georgia a red state that Trump messed up, or is Georgia a battleground state and Trump just accelerated?
I think it is a combination there of both. I think it's a little mix and match. I think what Brian Kemp did standing up to Trump and also keeping open the state, the economy has certainly been a much different sort of situation than when he inherited it. And it just looks different. The state looks different 4 years later than it did going into it.
It's funny, 9 months ago, I think I asked you, could the Atlanta suburbs do to Georgia what the Northern Virginia suburbs did to Virginia, which turned it sort of light blue, even though, yes, it'll elect a Republican governor now and then. I don't think we're saying that right now, are we?
I don't think so, and I think it's very tough to project what we're going to see in a couple of weeks. But this race, the gubernatorial race, the choreography is similar, but things have changed.
They have a lot. Jeff Hollinger, always good to get
Always good to be here, Chuck.
Good to get your wisdom. And thank you all for being with us for this hour, plus a little bit more, for a special edition of Meet the Press Now. Don't forget to sign up for our First Read newsletter for the day's top political stories. and midterm analysis. It's sent straight to your inbox every morning. Just scan that QR code on your screen right now. NBC News Now coverage continues with Tom Costello right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.